We'll go ahead and call the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. Can we request that the Kansas Open Meetings Act required notice has been properly provided?
I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice of the meeting was met.
So we've met our Public Open Meetings Act requirements, and at this point, I'll call roll. Board Member Olson. Board Member Sharp.
Here.
Board Member Miles.
Here.
Chair Dorsweiler.
Here.
So we have a quorum of the currently appointed members of the BZA, so we've met our Open Meetings Act requirements and have a quorum, so we can proceed on to today's business.
Next, we'll have the approval of the minutes from the October 21st, 2021 meeting. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll have new business, which is application V21-8. We'll have presentation by staff.
Okay. Mr. Chair, this is an application that has been filed by Michael Petroci, who's the owner of the Jackson Flats Washout, located on West Diamond Drive, and the request before you is a sign height variance to go from 30 feet, the maximum sign height that's currently allowed in an I-2 zone property, to 65 feet to allow a 65-foot tall pole sign on Diamond Drive in front of the business. And Mr. Hers will have the rest of the report for you.
So the subject property is a lot that's part of a lot split that's seen on the screen here, and is part of the Interstate District north of I-70 Edition number 2. And this particular plat has been replatted multiple times. The original plat occurred in 1980, with subsequent replatting happening in 2000 as well as 2008. And today what the applicant is requesting is a sign height variance for a truck wash, and it is titled Jackson Flats Washout, and the primary focus of the truck wash will be to wash out animal trailers that are hauling different animals across the interstate highway on I-70. And so one of the things that we begin with when we have a sign height variance is just a precautionary tale of making sure that we are protective of the sign regulations. We're very cognizant of that, and previous boards have been cognizant of that as well. There have been other applications that have been requested in which a landowner has wanted a sign that was taller than what the regulations required. And the important thing when we come across those situations is to make sure that we have really solid findings of fact if we do allow those height variances, so that we don't create any negative precedents. In the staff report and the history and the background, we did have a note about a case that occurred in 1996, and that case actually occurred on a property that was north of here, and it was this property here, which was the Kansas Truck Center. It's the corner of Pleasant Hill and 9th Street, and they wanted a 70-foot sign to be able to be seen from interstate. Now the thing with their application is they were much further than the 660 feet that the code has a boundary limit on. And what I mean by that is the code allows for properties that are zoned C5, C6, or C7 and are within 660 feet of an elevated interstate roadbed, which is what we have in this case, to have a sign that is taller than 50 feet, and as long as it doesn't exceed 70 feet and is no more than 50 feet taller than the interstate roadbed that's elevated. And so, as a point of example, if you have a 20-foot elevated roadbed, then you would be able to have up to a 70-foot sign, but you could not exceed 70 feet. If you had a 15-foot elevated roadbed, then you could go up to 65 feet. That's how the code is written. And now that is for C5, C6, and C7 commercial zoning districts. The applicant's property is zoned I2, which makes it a little bit unique. Because if it were zoned C5, C6, or C7, then the sign regulations would allow him to have the requested sign. The I2 district regulations, however, limit signage for pole signs to be no more than 30 feet. And so what we see here is a map, a zoning map of the surrounding area. The applicant's property is a lot split. That's roughly where my cursor is, just to give you some context of the surrounding area. So to the north and to the west, we have vacant farm ground. To the east, we have the Petro 2 truck stop. To the south, we have a number of hotels. There's a Days Inn, there's a Motel 6, and then there's two businesses here that are the Morton Building and Cat, and then there's another hotel, the Holiday Inn Express, that's to the southwest of here. So there's a lot of hotels in the area as well as the truck stop. And all of the developed businesses are zoned C5 or C7, which means they would be allowed to have pole signs that are taller than 50 feet at these locations. So the applicant is requesting a pole sign that is 65 feet tall. And here's a rendering of that drawing and another rendering of the drawing. And the property, the applicant says the property is unique because he is surrounded by commercial businesses that are already developed and all have signs that exceed 30 feet, which is what the maximum sign height is that he would be allowed to have in the current zoning district, which is I2. And staff would agree that it is a little bit unique because typically when we are near a major highway interchange, we do have C5 or C7 zoning. It's rare that we do have I2 zoning, which is what we have in this case. And so that does put the applicant at a disadvantage. What we have done in the staff report, and I'll try to pull up here as well, is created a table that shows the different height elevations. And what this is taken from is the city of Salina has a contour map that has 2-foot contours that show every 2 feet what the elevations are. And so you can see that there's quite a bit of lines here, a number of lines, which means we have a lot of elevation change happening. And with the peak elevation being around the overpass here, the overpass bridge where Interstate 70 goes over 9th Street, and that peak elevation is 1240. And so what we did is we took an inventory of all of the signs that are commercial and are along this frontage, around this corridor, this 9th Street and I-70 corridor, and we looked at the signs and we compared those elevations from the base of the poles to the 1240 dimension, which is the top of the roadbed. So Jackson Flats is listed first here, and you can see that the sign height that is proposed is 65 feet. The base elevation, or the elevation at the base of the proposed pole sign, is 1218, and this is 22 feet below the 1240 peak mark of the adjacent interstate highway. So all of these numbers are in comparison to the 1240 peak, and these are the actual sign heights of the various businesses. So there are a number of signs that are in the 64 to 70 foot range that you can see here, with 70 being the maximum that we could permit. And those are some of the newer signs like the McDonald's, the Motel 6, and the Petro 2. Those are all newer signs, and they have 70-foot sign maximum heights. There is a pre-existing non-conforming sign, which is the 24/7, and that's 91 feet. But all of the signs exceed the 30-foot maximum that the applicant would be allowed to have. So in looking at adverse effects on the neighbors, the applicant states that he will not harm or adversely impact any of the neighboring properties because they would be allowed to have a 65-foot sign as he is proposing. And staff would agree that it's difficult to conclude that having a 65-foot sign in this particular area would have a detrimental effect on any of the surrounding properties because they would be allowed to have a 65-foot sign as well, and many of them already do. Plus, the sign is on the north side of Diamond Drive, which would be on the north side of all the properties. So it wouldn't be between the existing properties and the interstate highway and wouldn't block the view of those signs to traveling people on I-70. And looking at unnecessary hardship, the applicant says that his business model is revolving around the idea that there are cattle trucks and things of that nature that are traveling through on Interstate 70. So his main customer base isn't local, but it's rather people passing through and is highly reliant on interstate traffic. And so in order to capture their business, he needs to let them know where he is and that he's there to begin with. And in order to do that, he needs to have a sign that's visible to trucks driving by where they see him from far enough of a distance away that they can actually, hit an off-ramp and they don't see him as they're just driving by and they miss him. So as part of his business model, he believes in order to have success, he has to have the 65-foot tall sign. And staff would also agree that in this particular case, because his property is surrounded by C5 and C7 properties, being limited to a 30-foot sign would put him at a disadvantage with all the other surrounding businesses that are taller and are allowed to have a taller sign up to 70 feet. And so for this reason, staff believes that limiting the application to 30 feet, which is the maximum in the I-2 district, would create an unnecessary hardship on the applicant's business. Looking at the effect on public health safety, the applicant states the variance will not adversely affect the public and it will not block or obscure visibility of any of the surrounding areas. And staff would also agree with that the biggest limitation is he's limited by the zoning district being I-2. And again, reiterating that any effects that his 65-foot sign would have would be largely localized and wouldn't impact the businesses that are in front of him or to the south between he and the interstate highway. Looking at the conformity with the general spirit and intent of the regulations, the applicant states that he's not asking for a sign that is taller than the surrounding areas, but rather be allowed to have a sign that is of equal height to what the surrounding businesses and commercial properties are allowed to have. And so here's where we really focus on the intent of limiting height of signs. And the reason and the intent for limiting heights for signs is to create a level playing field for businesses and to establish a uniform height maximum for all property owners to conform with. Staff is generally not supportive of granting sign height variances because of the concern about setting a precedent for future requests and concerns about the outbreak of sign wars where each business requests a sign that is higher than all of their neighbors. And so that's always a concern. In this case, the applicant isn't requesting a sign that would be higher or taller than what the neighbors would be allowed to have, but rather a sign that would be equivalent in height to what the neighboring properties would be allowed to have. So we do have a number of findings that we have on page 11 for your consideration, and we also have some alternatives. One is the board could approve the 35-foot sign height variance as requested with or without any conditions, as long as the findings of fact can be made by the board. Or the board could approve a lesser sign height variance, such as a 20-foot height variance, which would allow a 50-foot sign in lieu of the 30-foot maximum that he is allowed to have now, as a point of example. And number 3, the board could postpone action if additional information is needed, or they could deny the applicant's request for the sign height variance if they believe that the findings of fact cannot be made to support having a taller sign that's more than the 30-foot maximum that the I-2 district allows. Based on the unique conditions of the Jackson Flats washout property, none of which were created by the actions of the current property owner, staff would recommend approval of applicant's site height variance as requested, subject to the condition that construction and placement of the proposed pole sign shall substantially conform to the plan submitted and approved by the Planning Commission. So I'll take this opportunity to kind of go through some of the slides that I didn't go through as we were talking. One of them is the proposed location of the sign. So this is the site plan that has where the building is, how trucks will come in and be serviced and washed, as well as off-street parking. The proposed sign would be towards the front end of the property, and here's kind of a blown-up view. It would have a 12-foot setback to the pole, an 8-foot setback to the edge of the sign, and there's a drainage ditch that would be 25 feet from, so it wouldn't obstruct any of the property lines or encroach on to any of the adjacent properties. It would be solely located within the applicant's property and would meet all the sign regulation requirements with the exception of the sign height limit that the I-2 district limits signs to. There are also some pictures that the applicant provided, and they may, when we hear from him, he may want to add some context to it, but I'll kind of go through some of them. These are photographs of the surrounding area. Here's the Bobcat. This is from the property looking to the north towards Interstate. This is the hotel, the Holiday Inn Express. Here's the Bobcat site. Here's another hotel that's further to the south and to the east. This is looking directly east towards I-70 and 9th Street. You have the Petro truck stop and their signage, and then you have McDonald's. This is a 70-foot sign, just to give you some relationship. This is a 91-foot sign, and this is a 70-foot sign. So you have two 70-foot signs within this picture and a 91-foot tall sign as well. And this is Days Inn and Roadway Inn, and these are to the south and to the east of the property, looking towards I-70. And this is looking from 9th Street, from the off-ramp, or just north of the off-ramp, towards the applicant's property, which would be in this area here. And here again, you're looking to the east and then to the south. And this is directly south, where you have Caterpillar and you have Morton Buildings. And those signs are a little bit shorter. They're in the 40s, I believe. That's the hotel site. And then this is just a request area site plan that shows an aerial photo of where the property is located in relation to the surrounding properties that we just saw pictures of and the contours. Staff would note that we did hear from some of the neighboring properties. Blue Beacon has a truck wash that's in the vicinity, that's to the north and east, and they submitted a letter that's in your packet supporting what the applicant is requesting and concurring with their experience having truck washes across the country, that these types of signs along major interstate corridors are important for this type of a business. So with that, staff will take any questions that the board may have.
Are there any questions for staff?
No.
I do have one question. Currently, the height of the sign is restricted due to the zoning of the property. So is this something that if the property were rezoned to C5 or another type of zoning, that this problem would just simply be gone away?
That's a good question, and it's one that staff asked ourselves, but the reason that the applicant has selected this property is because it's one of the rare properties that has I-2 zoning that's in close proximity to the interstate, to an interstate highway and interchange, because the type of business he has does require an I-2 zoning. So you could rezone it, and then you can have a taller sign, but his business wouldn't be a permitted use then. So he's a bit of a unicorn in that he's a rare situation where he has to have I-2 zoning, but he also has to have interstate access and a taller sign.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to speak to the board? If you could please state your name and address.
Michael Petrosi, Jackson Flats Washout, owner, 640 West Diamond Drive is the location of our business. I appreciate you listening to our application today. Again, as Dustin stated, I'm not trying to go above and beyond to kind of set myself apart from the taller signs there. I just want to be able to have as good a visibility in my location. I would note that during the planning of this process, I was told during our design review meetings that I would have a 50-foot allowable sign height, and so that's why I proceeded with these plans and made the application to begin with. So it was a little bit of a shock to me that I wasn't allowed to have that from the beginning. So, but again, the business that we intend to create is not all, but very heavily influenced by out-of-town traffic, and so without them knowing where we are, it's very difficult, especially this is a new business, not something that's been existing or that they are aware of in any way. So having that visibility is extremely important for us. So I just appreciate your consideration, and thank you.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
I'm good.
Thank you. Any discussion amongst board members regarding the application?
No, I mean, that seems pretty straightforward to me. It's about as unique as it gets, I feel like. I mean, my only thought was kind of what you had alluded to about the zoning, if it was a different zone, if it would make a difference. But given that he has to be I-2 to do the business that he's in, yeah, it seems pretty straightforward to me. I don't know how you guys are feeling.
I would agree with that.
Is there a motion?
Before we have a motion, I will, for the record, just confirm that we don't have anyone from the public online that's interested in speaking, and it doesn't appear we have anyone in the room either, so we can move forward with that discussion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that the board approve application V21-8, just with, sorry guys, I was going to say that it's subject to the condition of the construction and placement of the proposed pole sign shall substantially conform with the plans submitted to and approved by, this says Board of Zoning Appeals, but I think that should be, it should be Planning Commission, am I correct?
Well, this is, in this case, what this is saying is the plans that the applicant has submitted for your review is what he has to carry out. That's what that means. So it's correct in the way it's worded, but what it means is that the plans that were presented to you today are the plans that he needs to follow through with.
Okay, well, I'll just clean that up then, guys. So I'll just say that I move to approve application V21-8, subject to the plans submitted to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Next on our agenda, is there any unfinished business to come before the board?
I don't think at this time we have anything. I haven't had any discussions. Dustin, are you aware of any discussions that might result in an application for the December meeting?
I don't believe so, no.
So we can't at this time confirm whether you would have a meeting in December. If it did occur, it would be the third Thursday of the month. And so we're not positive that would be the 16th, but we're not positive that that will occur or not occur, but we'll keep you informed of that. We are trying to come up with new ways, so we're getting the word out again through, we're going to try to utilize the city's Facebook page and other means to try to solicit additional members, because we're still presently at 4, and it's a 7-member board, so we're going to keep working in that direction, but that's the only other business we have, is to inform you that as of now, there would not be a December 16th meeting, but that's potentially subject to change if something got filed tomorrow. So,
Very good, thank you. Next on our agenda is public forum. Is there anybody that would like to speak to the board?
We do not have anyone from the public online.
Next, is there a motion for adjournment?
No, I can't. I clearly can't make a motion.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries.